Today's video is brought to you by Manscaped, the premium brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. Every day, Manscaped asks men a simple question. When you look around your bathroom and shower, do you like the huge collection of drugstore brands, or are you still using that same overpriced deodorant and body wash goop that you used when you were a teenager? Naming no brands in particular, but one is definitely in my mind. Manscaped is changing the game. They're going beyond the groin, if you will. Look, lots of men know Manscaped for their great products designed specifically for their Johnny Cochran, but there's a lot more available these days than just the trimmers of yesteryear. So check out their bundle kits. We've got the perfect package 4.0 right here, which includes, of course, the Lawnmower 4.0 waterproof trimmer. You'll notice no charging ports on this thing. You just pop it in the dock. Also contains essentials like the Crop Reviver, the Crop Preserver, a ball deodorant, ball toner. Now, if you're ready to upgrade to the starter set, the Performance Package 4.0 adds in their Weed Whacker, nose and hair trimmer. Got that right here. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Oops-a-daisy. And if you're looking to stop all of the needless drugstore runs, Manscaped's got you covered with their Platinum package, everything you need from the previous bundle, plus the ultra premium shower products, which I also have down here, as well as an underarm deodorant stick. And best of all, when you buy any bundle, you not just get one, but two free gifts included, including the Shed luxury leather travel bag and some very comfortable anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs. Right now, you guys can take advantage of a big Black Friday sale. Head to manscaped.com and get 25% off everything available online with free international shipping, plus those two free gifts when you use the code MGP20. Again, that's promo code MGP, like Mega Projects MGP20 at manscaped.com. Thank you, Manscaped, for sponsoring. And now today's video. There is perhaps no category of American technology, from cars and trucks to personal computers to even the very rockets that touched the face of the moon, that has captured the imaginations of, nor instilled a sense of awe and terror in the whole world, quite like its military aircraft. From the swaggering P-51 Mustang of World War II to the lumbering A-10 Warthog or the muscular predatory F-14 Tomcat, American warplanes have thrilled generations of little boys and girls, but if we're honest, it's mostly boys. I was one of them, with their dangerous looks, their devastating weapons piloted by devastatingly sexy aviators. These assassins in the skies are the backbone of American power, capable of striking and destroying targets anywhere in the world in mere minutes. For decades, to Americans, and really to every nation on Earth, the life of a fighter pilot was one lived on the edge, where anything was possible. Accidents were frequent and frequently catastrophic. Great deeds were a daily occurrence. On the decks of great hulking aircraft carriers and an environment soaked in jet fuel and testosterone, the American aviator was king. But the American aviator may have been king, and he was also vulnerable. Perhaps then it was something like a sigh of disappointment among purists that the US Navy, that supreme organization of air superiority on Earth, first introduced the world to the A-18 Hornet in 1974 amid the very last gasps of the Vietnam War. The world of the sky would change forever. Gone was a certain thrill of impending disaster that characterized the old American warplane, and in came an era of stability, of cost-effectiveness, and of safety. A boring era. If danger defines the golden age of the American aviator, then the Hornet signified the end of that age. For above all things, though it was fast, flexible, maneuverable, powerful, and durable, the carrier-ready, multi-role fighter attacker F-A-18 was safe. It was born into a new era of naval aviation, an era in which the most valuable assets the US Navy had would be the pilots themselves. Born of a long, unfulfilled dream, the F-A-18 Hornet was built to supplement and eventually to replace the vulnerable but slow Grumman A-6 Intruder attack plane and the expensive Grumman F-14 Tomcat, the same one immortalized in the first Top Gun film, by the way. And it was to do this in an airfighter role. It represented the leading edge of what became the fourth generation of American fighter/attacker aircraft. It combines the agility and reach of a Tomcat with the deadly accuracy and firepower of the Intruder, and it did it all in a package that was both smaller and yet more powerful than its predecessors. To these attributes, it added simplicity with 50% fewer parts than a Grumman F-14, reliability with an accident rate a mere fraction of the previous generation of Navy fighters, flexibility with the ability to act in air defense, scout scout role, electronic warfare, and other roles, as well as cost effectiveness, being capable of sustained service with only 1/4 of the maintenance hours of an F-14 and costing just a fraction to build. This, added to its smaller size, meant that the new A-18 could be deployed in much greater numbers on the decks of Navy carriers, fly many more sorties than previous craft, and serve many more missions than any single existing plane. Yet it would take many years for the A-18 to capture the public imagination in the same way that the other assassins of the sky once had in storied decades past. For all that it was flexible and ingenious in its design, the F-18 was just never as sexy as the A-10 or the F-14. It didn't look mean in the way the public believed a military plane should. If anything, it seemed a bit meek and unassuming. Compared to the Tomcat, the Hornet didn't leap off the screen, even when featured in hit films like Independence Day or Behind Enemy Lines. An underappreciated workhorse if there ever was one, first detested by the Navy airmen as a bean counter's dream of a thrift store aircraft, but later nearly universally admired among aviators, the F-18 has become one of the most successful designs in aviation history, and it did it all without really winning the love of the public. It's all rather sad. So today we're going to give it its full due. We're going to give you some reasons why the F-18 is perhaps the single greatest American military aircraft ever designed, making it way cooler than you thought. And just as a quick note here, we'll be referring almost exclusively in this episode to the F-18 Hornet and its variants that predate the larger evolutionary design, the F-18EF Super Hornet, which for the purpose of this video is a separate aircraft. However, as there remain a small number of existing F-18 Hornet A to D or other rare variants in service around the world, we will be referring to the Hornet in the present tense. This is despite the fact that the vast majority of original Hornets have been retired as of 2019. When the US Navy flew its final sortie of Hornets D, we just had to make a decision, and that's how we're running it in the video. By the early 1970s, it had become clear that the age of dogfighting in which dashing ace pilots matched wits toe-to-toe in small squadrons of maneuverable fighters was becoming a thing of the past. Fast improving radar and future-plan missile systems like the AIM-120 AMRAAM promised a future in which air combat would occur largely over great distances, usually further than visual range. At the same time, the advent of sea and air-based cruise missile systems and stealth technology, such as in the B-2 Spirit, in large part spelled the end of so-called area bombing, in which large wings of bomber aircraft dropped hundreds of bombs over their targets, defended by a few fighter aircraft. Air-to-air dogfighting was swiftly losing much of its relevance by the end of the Vietnam War, and the air superiority type aircraft was largely relegated after 1975 to defending carrier groups or very occasionally escorting cargo airplanes. There just wasn't that much use anymore for the king of the sky, Grumman's F-14 Tomcats, which must have been a disappointment to the US Navy, it having invested tens of billions of dollars in the plane's development. With a top speed of Mach 2.4 and as many teeth as a great white shark, the Tomcat was truly the reigning monarch of the sky by the late 1970s, but it was a kingdom in decline. The Tomcat had been built just in time to be made irrelevant. Indeed, through the entire life of their service worldwide, spanning nearly 50 years, the F-14 Tomcat managed to shoot down only 5 enemy planes in air-to-air combat. 5 kills in nearly 50 years. Just for context, in the Top Gun series, Tom Cruise's Pete Maverick Mitchell is purported to have shot down 5 enemy planes across his entire career. And with 712 Tomcats ever having been made and 68 accidental deaths directly attributed to the F-14, the plane was far deadlier to its own pilots than it was to an enemy in the sky. The Tomcat was not only increasingly irrelevant, but also somewhat of a liability for the US Navy. The F-14 was expensive, hard to service, and complex in its design. It was also quite large, which is an obvious problem when you're deploying planes from an aircraft carrier. In addition to all that, the F-14 had never been equipped with any kind of ground attack weapon system, and though that would come later in the 1990s and 2000s, by then the planes were on their way out, replaced with the Hornet or the new F-22 Raptor stealth fighter. The Hornet, despite entering service later than the F-14, actually began development at pretty much the same time in the mid-1960s. While Grumman was working on the F-14, destined to be the Navy's mostly wasted air superiority fighter of the future, then rival Northrop was developing their YF-17 concept, a radically redesigned fighter project that emphasized speed and agility over firepower and size. The original concept plane would be made out of aluminium and carbon fiber composite, making it light and lightning quick, with 2 extremely powerful turbojet GE-15 engines, the product of over 1 million man-hours of development and 5,000 wind tunnel testing hours. To develop the YF-17 into a versatile fighter/attack aircraft, Northrop partnered with McDonnell Douglas, who strengthened the airframe and added folding wings, catapult, and hook attachments to make the plane suitable for carrier operations. In addition, McDonnell Douglas also added 96-gallon fuel tanks to each wing, which added 4.5 tons fully loaded to the now nearly 17-ton aircraft, leaving it still lighter than the F-14 by nearly 10 tons. The original plane was so light and powerful, in fact, that it suffered from a significant problem not yet faced by any other military aircraft, one that caused Northrop to begin work on a brand new system that would become the world standard. That problem was G-forces. The F-A-18's twin engines together offered up about half of the thrust of the Mercury rockets that brought the first Americans into space. Though it would never be as fast at top speed as a Tomcat, the Hornet could fly with the seeming alacrity of its insect namesake. The F-18 would be one of the first military planes capable of accelerating straight up towards the sky without stalling. The light and powerful F-A-18, even after the added weight of fuel, weapons, and carrier hardening, was capable of over 9 Gs of acceleration, more than any service plane ever built before, and unmatched by any until the introduction of the F-22 Raptor in 2005. This made the F-A-18 capable of a turn rate of 19.2 degrees per second, under an average load of fuel and weapons, meaning it could make a 180-degree turn at full speed in under 9 seconds, very nearly as fast as the F-14. And the Grumman F-14 was no slouch itself. It was a powerful air-to-air weapons platform, and its variable sweep wings made it highly maneuverable, but its weight and size made it capable of pulling no more than about 6 Gs of acceleration. In contrast, the F-A-18 had a much tighter turning radius, since it could turn at lower speeds before accelerating again with its powerful afterburners, and its low weight and high acceleration meant that it was punishing for pilots to control at full tilt. Imagine flying a jet fighter so powerful and so quick that turning too hard to the left or right would result in a concussion as your head snaps to the sides, or that can knock you senseless just by thrusting the engines and pulling back the stick. Pilots reported broken ribs, whiplash, concussion, and other injuries just from the G-forces that the F-A-18 was capable of generating. Northrop had to develop the world's first fully digital fly-by-wire system with quadruple redundant backup systems just to make sure that the G-forces themselves didn't rip the plane apart or render it unable to be controlled by a pilot who finds him or herself blacking out while experiencing up to 9 Gs of force. This phenomenon, frighteningly known as G-lock, could create a situation in which a pilot was overwhelmed by the force of the plane's acceleration and would be unable to release the control stick to level out the plane. Thus, the F-A-18 became the first plane ever to feature an adaptive auto-leveling autopilot feature, which was capable of recovering the plane from a spin that had rendered its pilot unconscious due to extreme G-force. A plane that can knock you senseless and break your bones. This little fighter bomber was, in other words, a bit of a beast to drive. Alright, we've talked a lot about how the Hornet stacked up against the Tomcat. Well, one of the main points of interest to the US Navy especially was cost. The F-14 Tomcat was undoubtedly the finest air superiority machine of its era, but it was also quite expensive. Not only was each plane pricey at $38 million, or over $200 million in today's money, but so were parts and maintenance, as the plane needed to be frequently serviced and rebuilt. The F-A-18 would eventually reach a unit cost of just $29 million. That's $56 million today by the mid-90s. It was also much cheaper to operate, requiring only around a quarter as much maintenance and having fewer than half as many parts. It consumed significantly less fuel, and this, combined with its ability to carry up to 5 external fuel storage tanks and to be refueled in the air, made it extremely versatile as a carrier or land-based fighter, useful for long-range scouting and air defense alert roles in addition to its combat duties. These were among the reasons that the plane was adopted by the US Marines and Air Force in addition to the Navy. The cost effectiveness meant that more Hornets could be deployed and more quickly, allowing carriers to operate for longer in theater while flying more sorties than ever before. Lower cost of fuel and maintenance also means that the planes can be used more, and they have been. F-A-18s have carried out nearly 5,000 sorties over their service lives, with only 3 planes being lost, including 2 pilots being killed. Again, this is nearly double the number of sorties for the F-14 Tomcat, and it's an astonishing 33 times fewer deaths during their operation. Despite being giant death machines that fly through the sky at nearly double the speed of sound, flying the F-A-18 is statistically safer than driving a car. Another of the major safety features is the Hornet's innovative heads-up display, or HUD, which, when combined with later upgrades such as full-color electronic maps, laser rangefinders, and automated target designator computers, makes a single F-A-18 pilot capable of flying and deploying complex ordnance or other complicated tasks all alone. According to its chief historian, Dennis R. Jenkins, in F-A-18 Hornet, a Navy success story, the Hornet was proven time and time again, including during one incident in which it took direct hits to both of its engines, but still managed to fly over 200 kilometers back to base, be repaired, and be flying again within a couple of days. A US Navy Hornet's entire engine assembly could be changed in the space of just 20 minutes with no specialized equipment, meaning even heavily damaged pieces could be fixed right on the deck of a carrier if needs be. Now, I've already mentioned that the F-A-18 required a quarter of the maintenance of the F-14. It could also serve much more frequently and for longer periods. Hornets regularly served up to 8 months or longer in the US Navy in near continuous use, doing tours of duty in the Persian Gulf, the South China Sea, and the North Atlantic. A Hornet, properly maintained, could spend up to half of its time in the air, allowing pilots to spend as much as 12 hours in a single day operational if necessary, far more than any other carrier-based plane is capable of doing. The name of the game for the F-A-18 has always been flexibility. It's the plane's ability to play virtually any role that it's needed for that kept it flying in its various forms for decades. The Hornet comes in a variety of flavors, including 1-seat and 2-seat versions, land and sea-based, as well as planes specially designed for electronic warfare, carrying radar jamming equipment, and planes specifically designed for scouting, with laser rangefinders or other equipment in place of their standard cannon. It also served for decades as the demonstration plane of choice for the world-famous Blue Angels, the US Navy's flight demonstration squadron, which adopted the Hornet in 1986. And finally, even NASA gets in on the action. Operating the X-53 variant of the F-A-18, its high-altitude research vehicle used to demonstrate early thrust vectoring vane technology found on later versions of the Hornets, those metal slats that change the shape of the engine exhaust to keep the thrust distributed evenly. The F-A-18 Hornet is so flexible that it has even been adopted for dozens of roles in 8 countries, including Spain, Australia, Switzerland, Finland, Canada, and Kuwait, where they're still in use today. Even Malaysia has 34 of them still in use. But by far the biggest customers have always been the US Navy and the Marines, the latter of which still operate over 250 of the planes today. The Navy retired their fleet in 2019. Through its various configurations during its service life, the F-A-18 saw upgrades to its engines, computers, radar, avionics, hydraulic systems, and weapon systems. It was capable of being configured for use in any kind of weather and could load dozens of different types of ordnance and other payloads, from camera equipment to fuel pods. This plane just does it all. One of the key attractions of the F-A-18 was its ability to carry a vast array of weaponry. It has an exceptional 11 hardpoints, meaning spots where weapons can be attached to its hull, and it can carry scores of combinations of weapons designed for any possible mission. This, in contrast to newer, stealthier planes like the F-35 Lightning II or F-22 Raptor, neither of which is capable of carrying more than 4 bombs or missiles, seeing as they need to do it inside the protection of their radar-resistant hulls. Thus, what the US Navy has gained in stealth, they've given up in range and firepower. Though the Hornet most often carries AGM-84 Harpoon or LRASM long-range anti-ship missile capable of taking out an enemy ship from beyond visual range, as well as AIM-9 Sidewinder and AIM-7 Sparrow and AIM-120 AMRAAM air-to-air missiles, along with the of its standard Vulcan 20mm cannon, the F-A-18 can be equipped with dozens of other weapons at a moment's notice. And look, we're not going to go into every single one of those weapons, as each of them could probably qualify for a video of their own, and let us know in the comments if you want that. But suffice to say that if it goes boom, the Hornet could probably deploy it for you. It has the capability to bomb ground targets, shoot down airborne targets, dogfight, kill submarines, hit ships at sea, and carry smart bombs, laser-guided bombs, dumb bombs, cluster bombs, basically a bomb that's pregnant with several dozen smaller bombs, and even small tactical nukes. Yep. The Hornet, much forgotten and not a little unloved during its long life, was a better plane than most remember. Yet, as in all good things, the Hornet has seen its time in the sun, and it has seen that time fading. The last variant of the original Hornet chassis was manufactured way back in 1999, but hundreds of examples continue to play their roles across the world. Perhaps it's fitting in a way that Top Gun Maverick would introduce the world to the Hornet's successor, the F-A-18E Super Hornet. If you've just now fallen in love with the humble fighter/attacker, have no fear. The future remains bright for at least the descendants of the Hornet. Since 1995, McDonnell Douglas and subsequently its parent company Boeing have been building its successor, the F-A-18E and the F-A-18F Super Hornet. The Super Hornet, though it shares the name and designation of the old F-A-18, was redesigned from the ground up to introduce boatloads of improvements that engineers had thought up since the Hornet first entered service. Love it or hate it, or even if you just think, meh, it's clear that the original F-A-18 Hornet, as well as its Super Hornet spawn, will remain relevant in the world of air-to-air and air-to-ground combat for many years to come.